Well, the president appealing to Democrats today who may feel betrayed just as Joe goes into the lion's den. The vice president expected to meet with House Democrats any moment now. He's trying to get them to support the president's tax cut deal, and it ain't looking too good. My next guest is offering an alternative to that plan. He's California Democratic Congressman John Garamendi. Congressman, good to have you. The frustration is palpable, isn't it? Do you think that given the choice of the president's plan, we'll get into yours in a second, sir, or no plan, that they would vote no plan?
Well, we'll just have to see. You used the word frustration, palpable. Actually, it's anger. There is a great deal of anger about the way in which the proposal was put together and the proposal itself. You take a look at this thing and go, why would we, in this situation where we have such a high number of unemployed, allow the Republicans to use the unemployed, the 2.5 million out there that are going to lose their benefits, as a lever to gain support so that the very, very wealthy, the richest of Americans, can get $80 billion of tax relief. Makes no sense to many of us, and anger is probably a better word than frustration.
Right. Well, you and I can go back and forth on whether they're all so rich or all that, but I want to focus on your alternative, Congressman.
Sure.
What is that?
Well, if there must be a deal, and I'm not sure there must, but if there must be a deal, then let's cut this off at 1 year for the richest 2% of Americans out there and use that $40 billion to hire, well, how about maybe 1 million teachers? Actually, a little less. 800,000 teachers could be hired for 1 year with the $40 billion that would otherwise go to
the same kind of teachers we have now, because they're not quite all up to snuff.
Yeah, that's easy enough for you to say, but let me tell you what's happening in my district, where teachers are laid off and the classroom size has gone from 20 to 30. And you tell me kids are going to get a decent education. They're not, whether the teacher is good or just plain moderate or even bad.
I would prefer the teacher be good, but allowing for your math that you could hire that many people. Yeah. I assume you're saying that instead of renewing, fine, but instead of renewing the tax cuts for the upper income for 2 years, you're saying cut in half 1 year, use the money for something else. I think you know how this goes, Congress. I understand, but I know how this goes. Money that's targeted to go to something else ends up going still somewhere else. And you guys have a poor track record at allocating funds to even your most heartfelt wishes.
Hey, our most heartfelt wishes are with the people that are unemployed. 2.5 million are going to lose their ability even to put a Christmas meal on the table, and for the Republicans to use them as a stalking horse to give $80 billion to the top 2% of America's richest people is just plain unconscionable.
Yeah, but wasn't it the other way around, sir? Wasn't it the White House that threw that in there as a means of getting its support for extending the tax cuts, not the way you presented it?
No, exactly backwards, sir. The Republicans have insisted from go that the wealthy get another tax break, in this case $80 billion. If you're a deficit hawk, how in the world can you even begin to argue that it makes sense?
That's a fine argument, but then what's good for the goose should be good for the financial gander, right? Then you should say, I've got to find a way to pay for these jobless benefits. If you criticize Republicans and their fat cat allegiance and not paying for those benefits. I mean, you got to be consistent, right?
Well, I'm certainly willing to be consistent, and I would suggest that there is a way that you can do this. We have a foolish war in Afghanistan that's costing us well over $100 billion a year. We need to wind that down. We need to bring that money back home so we can build our economy, educate our kids, make things in America once again, build our economy.
No, well, that's well and good, Congressman, but I'm wondering if you saw what happened 5 or 6 weeks ago, because Americans repudiated the kind of direction you and your party were going on. I'm not saying that the Republicans were the instant beneficiaries because they trusted them. They benefited because they were not you. But what I am saying is, when people were polled on this very subject of whether you should extend tax cuts for everybody, almost 7 out of 10 said for everybody. Everybody.
Well, you and I have been around polling for a long, long time, and we both know it's how you ask the question. You break that question into two pieces.
Well, let me show it again. Let me show it again. This is a Gallup poll. It wasn't a Fox News poll, because I knew what you would have said about that. Extend the Bush tax cuts for all Americans for 2 years. Yes, no, unsure. 66% said yes.
Okay, break it into two pieces. Extend the tax cuts for the very, very wealthy, the top 2% at a cost of $80 billion a year. You tell me what the polls are. I'll tell you what the polls do say. Don't do it.
No, I think the polls,
question.
you don't need polls to realize what happened 5 or 6 weeks ago. People in the actual election said, get off this merry-go-round of spending. That's what's got to stop, right?
Well, look at the Republicans are borrowing, in this case, $80 billion, probably from China, to give it to the wealthiest
Well, what have you
Americans.
guys been doing with spending?
No
believe me, I'm all for the same sort of deficit concerns you have, sir. I'm just saying to say, on the head of a pin, you have one more saintly than the other. If you're going to argue that deficits matter, and you're going to tell me now not when it applies to jobless benefits, but it does to those who want tax cuts for the rich, and you say that it doesn't when it applies to tax cuts for everyone else, the American people are fair-minded enough to say, that dog don't hunt.
Well, what the dog that does hunt was the one that I just gave you, and that is don't spend $80 billion giving it to the people that simply don't need it. That is the very, very richest in America.
Give it to hire 1 million teachers.
Well, if that's the choice I would make, and
Okay.
I'll bet I'd get 80% of Americans to say, yeah, better to give it to 80,000.
I don't know. You might get the
800.
teacher vote on that, but I'm not sure you get 80%.
Well, I'll get the parent vote also, because those parents know that their classroom size is engaged. But the point that I made to you is that we could easily pay for the unemployment insurance, which is around $54 billion, by shifting money away from the
But bottom line,
unnecessary
I
work.
appreciate what you're trying to do here, but it's dead on arrival, right? Whatever the merits you're talking about, it's either the administration's compromise way or the rejection way, or we just start all over new way, pretty much, right?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm prepared to reject the notion that the richest of Americans should get $84 billion that we're going to wind up borrowing from China. I'm not there, and I don't know that
Well,
my
we've been borrowing
colleagues
for
are
a
there
long
also.
time. I mean, I don't know where this sudden new religion came, but I admire you just the same.
Well, you take a look at where the deficit came from.
Okay.
The
The evil Bush. You're right. Lucifer. Bush.
Yes.
I forgot. All right.
Yep.
Congressman, thank you very much. By the way, a
Always a
reminder,
pleasure.
this Friday, we're going to be live from Washington, D.C. We're going to have an exclusive chat. Well, we're across to the White House with the Chamber of Commerce President, Tom Donahue.